Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. In this week's program, Manipuri activist Irom Sharmila acquitted after a 14-year hunger strike. In a special focus on child rights in Asia, we look at the following stories. Police in collusion with child trafficking crime syndicates in South Asia. Rehabilitation centers in the Philippines notorious for child abuse. Burmese police failed to arrest employers that tortured child domestic worker. 10-year-old Pakistani boy who lost both arms awaits justice. AHRC TV speaks with Basil Fernando on the alarming lack of protection for children in Asia. Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. I'm Jessica Fernando. We begin the program with news from Northeast India. Irom Sharmila, better known as the Iron Lady of Manipur, has been acquitted by a sessions court this week. Sharmila has been on hunger strike for 14 years, demanding an end to the Manipur conflict and a repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which provides sweeping powers and impunity to security forces. The government of Manipur had charged and tried Sharmila for attempting to commit suicide, an offense under Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code, which carries a maximum of 1 year imprisonment and fines. Imphal East Sessions Court Judge Guneshwar Sharma, while acquitting Sharmila, said that Sharmila's protest is political in nature and that it is within the law for a citizen to resort to legal and peaceful means to protest. The court also said that it is the state's responsibility to respect such protest. The Supreme Court, as well as the Law Commission of India, have stated that Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code is anachronistic and should be deleted from the law. Sharmila, who has been force-fed in custody since November 2000, is now free. The Iron Lady has chosen to continue her hunger strike. AHRC TV will report on further developments in future programs. Across Asia, children are vulnerable to trafficking. AHRC TV catches up with Hasina Karbi, a human rights defender from Shillong, Meghalaya, in India, who works on cross-border human trafficking in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Burma, and China. Over to Hasina.
If you're looking in India context and the Indian context of the legal system and its function on trafficking, we have seen that over the years there has been a vast changes that has taken place. Firstly is the role of the law enforcement has varied from state to state, but the function of the anti-human trafficking units that has come up over the years under the Ministry of Home Affairs has evolved to be more active and participatory, working together with civil society organizations to address the issue of child and women trafficking. But what we have seen in our experience for the last 15 years is that if sensitization on the law enforcement is higher, then the activeness on addressing the issue is very much more better. But in some states, what we have seen is that when training programs or in terms of sensitivity of the law enforcement on the issue is not there, then we have seen that there has been a very lapse in terms of the intervention. But having dealt with crime issues such as child and women trafficking, we also have to understand that the nexus is very high. And we often see the good and the bad, whether in the legal system in our country as well. The good side is proactiveness of law enforcement officers are very much there. We have experienced that. We have seen the kind of work we have done together with them. We have seen success in it. But we've also seen that our partner organizations across the country have also faced that the law enforcement dealing at the police station sometimes is very much involved in the crime where the information is already leaked before a rescue operation, or sometime when arrest takes place, the bail is being provided to the trafficker immediately. So these are situations which is very much relevant and is still relevant. And many organizations are experiencing that. But I would say there has been a change. And I think the more the non-profit organization or civil society organization work on the issue and try to be more persistent with the fact that they're working on it in the legal system, it's going to see a great change in the future.
Children in the Philippines, housed in government custodial centers, are being subject to torture, inhumane treatment, violence, assault, threats, and intimidation. The Reception and Action Center in Manila is one such custodial and rehabilitation center, where children in conflict with the law, street children, and orphans are kept in custody. The AHRC is under the supervision and control of the local government. To learn about the reality of such a center, the AHRC TV speaks with Catherine Sierri from the Philippines organization Bahay Tulayan.
It's very, very poor. The children are incredibly crowded in RAC. They don't have appropriate facilities like toilets, beds. They are not given adequate services. They don't have access. Many of them, their parents don't know that they're there, so they're taken there and they have contact with their parents or family members. And it's up to the family members to try and trace and find where the children are. For children who are studying, they're taken out of school to put in RAC and they're not given alternate schooling or appropriate health checkups. So basically for us, the services in RAC are incredibly poor. They're really just basically detained in a room. The government doesn't say they're detained, they say they're sheltered, but essentially they are kept locked up in one room. Often they're woken up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and brought downstairs. Sometimes they're woken up by having water poured over their heads. They're brought downstairs so they can shower early in the morning, and then they are made to wait downstairs for several hours until they can eat their breakfast. And then they're taken back to their room where they're detained in their room for the rest of the day. There's very small quantity of staff responsible for the children. Most of the time there's only maybe 2 house parents, and they're responsible for up to 100, sometimes more than 100 children. The house parents don't know many of the children's names, and so because there is such a lack of adult supervision, what happens is that the children end up supervising themselves. So there are some children who act as the de facto house parents, and they often use very, very violent means to discipline other children. Many children reported to us that they have been very severely beaten inside RAC, both by staff and by other children. And it seems that very, very few of their complaints are addressed, if at all. There are government regulations in relation to the shelter of children, and the RAC is under the city government of Manila, and it is in grave violation of those regulations that are set down by the national government. Other organisations that shelter children are required to comply with those regulations, and they are regularly monitored and accredited to make sure that they stay in compliance. RAC has never been accredited, and as far as we know, it's never even been inspected by the national government, who's responsible for regulating shelters for children.
This isn't isolated to the Philippines, but we're looking for governments to be very proactive in addressing the root causes of children being on the street and not just punishing them for their status as children on the street.
Ma Tet Tet, a 14-year-old domestic worker from the Ayeyarwady region in Burma, has been permanently disabled after enduring months of torture at the hands of her employers. Burmese police have failed to act against the employers. In December last year, Ma Tet Tet began working in Three Ko Neng and Ki La Mient's house in Yangon for 25,000 chet per month. During her time there, Ma Tet Tet suffered numerous instances of torture. The couple punched her in the face, beat her with a stick, hit her on the head, stabbed her with scissors, and cut her hands with pliers. Her hands were put in hot oil when she overcooked a meal by mistake. This permanently disabled her right hand. After 4 months of work, her body was covered with bruises. The girl was eventually sent to Pathain General Hospital, where a Buddhist monk and the Myanmar Cultural Impact Studies Club discovered her trauma and contacted her family. Ma Tet Tet's mother lodged a police complaint against the perpetrators for torturing her child. 5 months since the case was filed with the Bahan Township Police Station, the perpetrators are yet to be arrested or prosecuted. Burma signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1999, but does not offer adequate protection to its children. Over a month has passed since the tragic incident in Punjab, Pakistan, where a landlord severed the arms of a 10-year-old boy. While the boy's treatment continues, there is no progress in the case. The landlord is being held at the police station, where he is reportedly being provided all modern comforts, instead of being locked up in remand prison. The Chief Minister's announcement to have the boy sent anywhere in the world for treatment has also been forgotten. Officials are now avoiding the subject. Even the Supreme Court, notorious for meddling in the most insignificant issues, is keeping mum. A month after the incident, a committee set up under the Deputy Inspector General of Police of Lahore has concluded nothing. Although the incident is a clear and deliberate act of bodily harm to a minor, which involved tying the boy's hands and running them through a wheat thresher, the investigation has not been concluded. Several officers investigating the incident have reportedly been visiting the child and his family in hospital, in attempts to pressure the family to withdraw the case. The police initially failed to file a first information report until the incident had been widely publicized in the media. As the victim's family is poor, they have been unable to purchase justice and security. Meanwhile, according to reports by medical staff at the Jinnah Hospital in Lahore, the boy's condition has deteriorated. He is losing weight and running a high fever. To consider how law and law enforcement fail to protect children in Asia, we speak to Basil Fernando, Director of Policy and Programs at the Asian Human Rights Commission.
I think this is one area where the human rights organizations should really examine the way they work. The fact is that the Burmese criminal justice system and the police simply don't have the capacity to do a proper investigation. Over about 40-50 years, there was a military regime, and the investigating anything by the police was never done with any kind of forensic capacity. Methods of investigation has not been established. The procedures are not being established. So simply they don't have the capacity. Now in the case of Pakistan, they do have the capacity, but the system is so corrupt. So therefore the investigation doesn't happen. So I think it is the obligation of the human rights organization to not to be blind leading the blind. We should not create the impression that this establishment has the capacity to investigate, but they are not doing it. In fact, they don't have the capacity to investigate, and that is the issue that we should make and call for serious changes and reforms, and make the responsibility for these cases the responsibility of the government. So it is the government that has failed to investigate into these crimes by not providing the possible resources and training programs and power and the capacity for these institutions. If the government creates institutions which has only some facade, but they really don't investigate into such serious crimes, like everybody else, children are also at risk. So we are societies, we are becoming societies in the less developed countries. We simply are not putting our resources to protect our children. And that's the responsibility of the government. These systems are not capable of doing that. And our message, the human rights message, should be for reform of criminal justice institutions. Without that, child rights cannot be protected. If you only shout, children have this right, children have that right, and this right, but we do not go further and say the systems to protect these rights doesn't exist, then we are failing in our duty.
That is all for this week's Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. For more information, log on to www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.